Here's what you need to know.
From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
It's now 3 o'clock. Your Portland Trailblazers hammered the Sixers last night, 130-104 at Moda Center. Jeremy Grant, game high 27. Malcolm Brogdon got off, 24 points and 9 assists, and Scoot dropped 22 off the bench. Tomorrow night, Damian Lillard makes his return to Portland. Bucks and Blazers from Moda Center tip-off at 7. Game day at 4:30 here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Elsewhere, Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe have been named to the NBA Rising Stars game during All-Star Weekend. From the NFL, 49ers are a current 2-point favorite over the Chiefs. Super Bowl 58 live from Vegas, Allegiant Stadium, Sunday, February 11th, kickoff at 3:30. Elsewhere, Ben Johnson has ended interviews and will return to Detroit as the Lions offensive coordinator. With Johnson out, it appears the Hawks' top 2 candidates for head coach are Dan Quinn and Ravens defensive coordinator Mike McDonald. Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad's coming at you next. Frank Schwab talking NFL at 3:20. Sean Highkin talking Blazers at 4:20.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio. The Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad, presented by Lazy Boy. What is your strategy for comfort?
Dermonti dribbling it at the wing. Now the ball to Henderson. Lobs it to Ayton. Touch pass outside to Thibault. Three-pointer good. Henderson another 3, and he hits it again. Scoot 3 for 3 from beyond the arc. So Blazers win 130-104. The Streamers come down here at Moda Center.
I can't wait at the end of the game. I'm going to say, hey, they had us in the first half, not going to lie.
Big time legend.
Can't take it anymore, Godfather.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad starts now.
All right, Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad. We appreciate your time. We've got Frank Schwab of Yahoo Sports coming up in 20 minutes to talk some NFL.
Yes!
The big question we got to ask him is, why are the 49ers favored over the Chiefs?
Oh, sure.
Seriously, why?
I don't get it. Everybody wants to roll with Patrick Mahomes, right?
I don't understand what's going on.
I don't either.
I have no idea. At 4:20, Sean Highkin, Rose Garden Report, going to stop by and talk Trailblazers. We'll get his take on the recent play of the Blazers. Dame making his return to Portland for the first time tomorrow night. And then we'll ask about some rule changes to give the defense a helping hand in the NBA, because we have seen an offensive explosion. So Sean Highkin coming up at 4:20. It's also a Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. You can always go to trailblazers.com for your ticket needs. It is powered by Lazy Boy. Get game ready with Lazy Boy. And we're going to give away a pair of tickets at 4 and a pair of tickets at 5. So 2 pairs of tickets to give away. Trailblazers Ticket Tuesday today. Now, it's been a very busy day for me, Godfather. I was up way too early and driving around in way too much traffic. But I'll tell you another thing I discovered I liked about my Kia EV9, the all-electric, full-size SUV, the only one on the market. I'm getting older, and I hate to admit this, and as I've told you, my eyesight's not getting better. It's getting worse.
Yeah.
I've never had to wear glasses, never had contacts, none of that. But I've recently gotten into the habit of trying on readers, and I'm going to have to make that adjustment.
Yeah.
But the scariest part is when I'm driving at night, and I've noticed this over the last few years. I'm a disaster. Like, I am a dangerous human being behind the wheel of a car at nighttime. But here's where the EV9 is nice. It's got all these freaking sensors and cameras everywhere. So if you're getting ready to make a lane change and there's a car there you don't see, your car will buzz and give you a warning.
The blind spot monitor is the best thing that ever happened to cars.
The blind spot monitor is incredible because you go to make a left turn, you turn on the signal, that camera comes on, you get to see the entire blind spot. That helps me from making a mistake because I'm not what I used to be. And I'm not joking.
Well, it's great that you admit it. A lot of people do not admit that. Driving at night, as you get older, gets harder and harder. My dad used to say that. He got to the point where he wouldn't drive at night. But I hope I don't ever get to that point. But it's tough, no question.
The EV9 has been terrific, very comfortable. The only problem is it's turned me into the guy I swore I would never become. I had a meeting down at Moda Center today, and they've got those charging stations all over the place because they've equipped the entire building for that kind of stuff. So I pull into the parking garage, and I back in because you have to back in. You have to be back in, guy.
To get the thing on the right side of the charger, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
So not only am I going full electric now in comfort, but now I'm back in, guy. It's turned me into exactly what I didn't want to be.
See, I'm never that guy. I see people doing that more and more and more. They back it in.
I hate it.
I don't. And I have the backup camera. I still don't like that.
Every time I see it, I'm like, what are you, special? You got to back in?
Yeah.
I don't like back in, guy. Now I'm back in, guy.
And usually it's a show off. It's a guy that just wants to show you he can do it.
All right. February 9th, Dwight and I are going to be doing something crazy. And if you are one of those people out there that doesn't like Dwight and you're hoping for the day that he kicks the can, this might be the day. February 9th, we're going to be live at the Jackson's Food Mart off Bangy Road, I-5 and 217 right here by the station. We're going to be inside of a beer cooler, 37 degrees for 3 hours doing a live talk show. The entire Rip City Drive inside of a 37-degree cooler, and we're doing it for a great cause. We're doing it for ALS Northwest because I've had my grandfather and other friends I know impacted by ALS. Many people in this community have, so we're doing it for a great cause. So you can stop by, see us in the cooler, cheer on Dwight's demise, and also go to our auction, which is up and live right now, where you can bid on autographed Trailblazer basketballs, pennants, an autographed Scoot jersey. We have Coors Light silver seats for an upcoming Trailblazers game. You can play around a golf with Dwight and I. You can also bid to be a Trailblazer reporter for a game with me this year. Go to the game. You're a press member. We go to the post-game press conference afterwards. You get to be a member of the press for a game. Or if you want to host the Rip City Drive because you think we suck, you can also bid to host the Rip City Drive.
Find out how hard it is, right?
That's right. So go to ripcityradio.com, pull up the calendar page, click on the icon, Chillin' for a Cause, and you'll have the link right there for our auction. All proceeds will go to benefit ALS Northwest. February 9th, Chillin' for a Cause from Jackson's Food Mart, Bangy Road, I-5 and 217.
And really, if you've never seen anybody actually freeze to death in mid-sentence, you might drop by. I think it's a good opportunity for you because by the third hour, this guy doesn't like it cold. And it's going to be a test, a real endurance test.
I have motives for this. You've been bothering me lately, and I'm too much of a chicken to tell you that. So I thought, what, I'll just stick him in a cooler for 3 hours.
Yeah.
That'll teach him right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's coming up on February 9th. We want you to join us. We're going to talk football with Frank Schwab coming up in 20 minutes. We'll ask him why the 49ers are favored over the Chiefs. It's really confusing. But I want to start with this story today out of the NFL. Ben Johnson, who was considered the hottest candidate on the market entering the offseason, has decided to end all interviews. He's going back to Detroit to remain there as the Lions offensive coordinator. Now, there is a report from Adam Schefter of ESPN who said that there were some around the league who kind of balked at Johnson's agent's demand for salary and what he wanted as a head coach. So that could be part of it. But the bigger question to me is this, Godfather. You know how coaching works. You want to capitalize when your name is the hottest, right?
Sure.
Detroit is coming off a phenomenal season. They nearly got to the Super Bowl. That offense was terrific, and he's been a hot candidate now for the last couple of years. My concern for him would be this. There's no guarantee, as Dan Campbell said after the game, they'll get back there. There's also no guarantee that you're going to have the same type of smashing success with that offense with Jared Goff. I wonder if he's taking a big risk by going back, suffering and not having the same type of success, and then all of a sudden next year when those openings come up around the league, his name might not be as hot. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think you might be right. Most people would say, get that head coaching job when you can. It really doesn't matter which team it is or how much money you make. You're on that next level. And so it'll be easier for you to get your next head coaching job because you're already in the club. You're in the club already. It's a matter of just shifting to a higher level in the club.
Yeah.
And I think he's taking a big gamble. And I know he feels he's got leverage. He's comfortable in Detroit. He thinks that's great. So he's going to ask for a lot of money to go. And I think he might have thought he was going to get it, but now it appears he's not.
Well, the great news is for Detroit, now all of a sudden you come back and you're going to be able to make another run at it. One of the hardest things for head coaches is replacing quality candidates. Just take a look at Philadelphia last year when they lost Shane Steichen and what happened to their offense with Jalen Hurts. Now Detroit can come back, run it back, and see if they can get back there and do it again, and that's going to be fun to watch. But I'm always concerned for coaches who are hot 1 minute, and the next minute you can have a bad season, you can have a bad stretch, you can make a couple of bad calls, and then all of a sudden people start to second guess you. That's the risk there.
Well, and really, Chad, next season, I think the odds are pretty high that they won't have as good an offense as they have this
Possible.
year. Yeah, I think it's entirely possible. They'll be playing a tougher schedule.
True.
You got to keep your quarterback healthy all year long, like you did this year.
Yeah.
Which is always iffy. Look how many went down this year, and then your receivers have to have a big year, and things just have to break your way. They had a real good offensive season this year. Duplicate that, maybe, if you don't have a championship game hangover next year.
I also wondered in the back of my mind, could it be that someone in the front office with the Detroit Lions snuck around and got to Ben and was like, hey, we're not so sure that the current head coach is stable enough to be the long-term head coach of our franchise.
Yeah.
Sit tight. You might have an opening here in Detroit after next season.
Yeah, you've heard of next man up. You are next man up here, and the guy ahead of you has a tendency to lose his mind on occasion.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I don't necessarily buy this stuff about the agent and being too demanding with salary. I mean, these guys know what coaches are worth and what their value is and what the going price is for a first-time head coach. My guess is when he pulls his name out and he might have been your top assistant, that's when these teams will get ticked off because they were close to making a hire. And they're like, well, he wasn't even a shoo-in to get the job anyways. And besides, he was asking too much. So I don't necessarily buy any of that either, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Ben Johnson and his agent aren't going to go out and ask for Jim Harbaugh money when he's going to be a first-time head coach. They know the deal. They know how it's played. The agents know how it's played. They're not going to get too over the top in demands. So I'm not necessarily buying that either. I think these teams get ticked off because you interview a guy, maybe you get a second interview. You're far down the road.
Yeah.
And you're now way past the end of the regular season where these teams got to lock in their head coach.
They've spent probably a month on this guy. You know, when you right at the start of the process, they zero in on him. They make the appointments. They interview him once, Zoom interview. Then they interview him again, Zoom interview. And they prepared. They obviously prepared an offer for him. So all of that is attorney fees.
Yeah.
It's money just thrown away, basically.
Now, with this maneuver by Ben Johnson going back to Detroit, what that means is we have a much clearer picture on what the Seattle Seahawks are going to do. Right now, it looks like the top two candidates for the Hawks are Dan Quinn, who is the Cowboys defensive coordinator, used to be with Pete Carroll and his staff back in the day, and then Ravens defensive coordinator Mike McDonald.
Mm-hmm.
Dan Quinn was the guy I thought they would hire all along because, as we told you, anytime it comes to a coaching hire, especially for a guy like John Schneider making his first head coaching hire, you always look to who that individual is connected to. Dan Quinn makes a lot of sense. He's had success as a head coach in Atlanta, even though he had the failed Super Bowl against the Patriots. He knows the city of Seattle. He's got a relationship with John Schneider, and I think that makes a lot of sense. It's not a flashy hire as it would be to bring in the young offensive assistant, but I do respect Dan Quinn, and I do think he would do a good job in Seattle, given his second go-around. And I think a lot of times these coaches, you know how it works, Godfather. You get your first chance. He had a lot of success in Atlanta, and then he was gone. But a lot of times coaches, when they get that second opportunity, they're much better the second time around because they get a chance to correct the mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm. I think that's true. I'm a little surprised they didn't go after that young offensive guy. I think that's the trend.
Well, they did. I think they had interest in Ben Johnson, too.
Yeah, but they got, there's one guy on their list. The other two guys now are both defensive guys. And I would say if that's what you're interested in, you might have two of those just in case the number one guy backs out on you.
I agree. And as we were talking about yesterday, look at the offensive coaches and the impact they've had this year. Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. What he did with Jordan Love throughout the course of the season, coaching him up. Andy Reid, great offensive mind. Receiving corps was a complete disaster. They've been dynamite in the playoffs, coaching and development. And you can pick and choose. Look at what Ben Johnson did with the Detroit Lions offense this year. Mm-hmm. Look at what the Texans were able to do with their offensive coordinator and the work of C.J. Stroud. Coaching and development with great offensive minds. I think that's where the NFL is at. We'll see how it shakes out. Now, again, if you get a defensive coach and you get a great offensive coordinator, as long as that offensive coordinator is allowed to do what he does, you should be okay. The other thing about Ben Johnson in Detroit, Dan Campbell gives him autonomy over the offense to call the plays he wants to call. And coaches like that. They have the freedom to call a game they want to call it.
Well, yeah, because they're going to be evaluated on the bottom line, how well the defense does. And if they're not getting to do what they want to do, that's not a good situation.
All right, Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports, going to join us next. Why are the 49ers favored over the Chiefs? We'll find out next.
It's Rip City Drive on 620 Rip City Radio. Brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Listen on your free iHeartRadio app for all your music, radio, and podcasts.
All right, Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. Our first pair of tickets, we'll give those away coming up at 4 o'clock. If you want to jump on board, 503-248-0620. Joining us right now is a man who covers the NFL and a variety of other things. He's awesome. He is with Yahoo Sports. Frank Schwab is back on the Rip City Drive. Frank, Dwight and I were talking about this. One, you probably got to be insane to bet against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. But most importantly, why are the 49ers a slight favorite over the Chiefs? We can't figure it out. Why?
It is interesting. I think that part of it is, I mean, from week one to now, the 49ers have been a better team. You look at some of the Chiefs' struggles during the season. I mean, there's a team that lost to the Broncos and the Raiders. Raiders at home. It wasn't like they had this unbelievably great season. It's the worst season that the Chiefs have had in the Mahomes era. And that just kind of speaks to how high the bar was set there. But this wasn't a dominant team by any means during the regular season. They've really caught fire in the playoffs. Hats off to them. They're fantastic. But I think it just goes to when the odds makers make these lines and the power ratings still, are holding on to numbers that they had when the 49ers looked legitimately pretty unbeatable at times early in the season. It still hangs on to that, and they still, look at it and say, hey, the Chiefs are, really, really good team, but the 49ers were too, and don't be a prisoner of the moment and recency bias and all that. So I understand why the Chiefs are favored, or why the 49ers are favored, but I mean, clearly the Chiefs are playing better right now.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that too, Frank. Would you bet against Mahomes and Andy Reid? I mean, that's postseason play. That's a pretty tough thing to beat right there.
I mean, I hate to say it, but I have the last 3 games. Like I just couldn't get it out of my head that the Chiefs were a team that struggled along, and they have flaws. And I hate to sit here and just say nothing matters but the quarterback, but maybe nothing matters but the quarterback and the coach too. I mean, Reid is unbelievable. You look at this team over the course of the season, you say, they lost to the Raiders at home. Like this was not a vintage Chiefs team, but when I kind of underestimated them being able to flip the switch in the playoffs. They've done everything they need to do. The defense has been great. I think that's a really, really big part of this whole story. And, I did say, I mean, as dumb as I've been the past few weeks to go against them, I did say near the end of the season, one of my power rankings after they lost to the Raiders, actually, I said, let's not cross off the Chiefs just yet. Yeah, they look bad right now. It doesn't look, not bad, but, it doesn't look like a vintage Super Bowl type of team. But when you get to the playoffs, when you ask who's the best quarterback in the playoff field and who's the best coach in the playoff field, the answer to both questions might be the guys from Kansas City. Now, I should have followed my own advice when I wrote that a few weeks before the playoffs, but it just shows that a great head coach and a great quarterback can cover up so many other deficiencies on your roster.
Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports here on the Rip City Drive. I saw your tweet where you're like, hey, it matters when the most famous person in the world wants to show up at a football game, and we can have both Taylor Swift and football. I want to know if you think it's possible that we could get Kelsey to propose after the game if the Chiefs win.
I saw somebody was posting the odds on that. It was crazy. I would doubt it. I don't think Taylor Swift wants to be put on the spot like that after a Super Bowl. But I love the story. I do. Like I don't understand why people are so bent out of shape about Taylor Swift being on her TV for 3 seconds at a time during a 3-hour broadcast. Like I'm fine with it. She's one of the few people on the planet who's more popular than the NFL. And I think NFL fans really have a problem with that. I do. Like, I think that the NFL fans are so territorial about, the rating. Like, why would anybody care about the ratings of the NFL? But we all do, trust me. I mean, everybody reads stories I write about the NFL ratings because there's just this weird tribalism with the NFL where it has to be the most popular thing in the world, and look how much better it is than the NBA, and look what its ratings are against the World Series and all this kind of stuff. And I think Taylor Swift is one of the few things that actually challenges the NFL's popularity. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's other things. I don't know, but I'm here for it. I just think it's cool. Like, I think that if it brings in new fans, that's great. I think that Taylor Swift has for as famous as she is, I mean, from all accounts, I've never met her. I don't know her, obviously, but you read a lot about her and hear a lot about her. I've read a lot more about her over this football season than I had before. She handles her fame so incredibly well. I mean, I can't even imagine being that famous, but she seems fairly down to earth as far as that goes. So I'm here for it. I'm here for Taylor Swift being shown 58 times during the Super Bowl. Bring it on. I think it's going to be a fun slideshow.
Frank, I'm trying to recover from the shock of hearing that you've never met Taylor Swift, but I'll try to move on from that.
Right?
Yeah, I can't believe that.
You'd think we ran in the same circle.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But anyway, Ben Johnson decides he's not going to Washington. And so what do the Commanders do now after, I assume, wasting some time on him? Have any idea who's warming up in the bullpen for them?
It's a hard question, and I mean maybe it's Aaron Glenn, the Lions defensive coordinator, which is kind of funny. Yeah. But the Ben Johnson thing is really interesting because I think, like you said, from all accounts, he was really their target. But you go back a few weeks ago. I mean, this was a while ago. Somebody, I can't, maybe it's Pro Football Talk, I'm not sure, put out there that Ben Johnson's asking price was like $13 million a year to be a head coach, which was unbelievable. Like, wow, the guy's never been a head coach before. I was asking for. But Washington had to know this, and now things are trickling out that he just wanted too much. Well, you knew that. What, you thought he was just going to give up? Like, he's one of the hot names, and I think that he was comfortable going back to Detroit, as we saw. Like, he's not desperate for a head coaching job. He's still a young guy. He thinks he's going to be a hot name still next year. I always warn against that because you just never know. I mean, if Jared Goff falls apart next year, all of a sudden nobody's going to want to hire Ben Johnson. It's just kind of how it is. We've seen it happen a few times before. So I don't know that necessarily you just wait until the perfect job comes along, because sometimes the NFL moves on without you. But he was very comfortable. If he didn't get a head coaching job, said something to the effect today that he thinks he's got a good shot to win a Super Bowl with the Detroit Lions, and he might. I just think, if Washington was blindsided by anything here, I think that maybe that's a them problem, and that they didn't, they just thought they could bully him into taking a lesser deal. And Ben Johnson was perfectly willing to turn down their job and just go run an offense again with the Detroit Lions.
Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports here on the Rip City Drive. All right, you've had some time to decompress. What's your take on Dan Campbell's fourth down decision-making in the NFC title game?
Yeah, and it's tough for me because I like analytics. I consider myself as an analytics guy. I follow all that, but I also think there's nuance, and there's situationally this stuff has to come. We have to consider what's the circumstance right here. It might be a different call in the second quarter of a game in Week 3 against the Vikings than it is in the NFC Championship game when you're up 14 points, and the 49ers have just scored the first points of the second half. I just thought at that moment it was just kick a field goal. You're going up 17. You're going up 3 scores. You're putting them still in that hole where they're worried about, we got a long way to go here in this game. Whereas the moment that pass hit the ground, and I know I'm not the only person that thought this, moment that pass hit the ground, I thought 49ers were going to win this game. Part of that is unfairly because
I thought that.
I hate to say it. Right. And I think a lot of people did. Unfairly because it's the Lions. Like if it was the Packers or Cowboys or whoever, we might not think that, but because of the Lions' history, we thought that. But I think the 49ers thought that too, and the crowd thought that. And, for a lot of analytics guys do not believe in momentum or anything like that. I do. I don't know how you can't. You could see it in that game in the stadium. The tenor totally changed to that game. It's still an emotional game. It's not played by robots. So, and another part of this analytics debate that doesn't get talked about enough is a lot of times when we're talking about win probability percentages, people talk about this like it's an absolute. Like oh, there's a no-brainer because one number is bigger than the other. We're talking about sometimes a percentage point. That's a rounding error. You're allowed to. If it says you're 68% to win, and if you kick a field goal, and if you're 69% to win, if you go for it, that's still a coin flip to me. Basically, I know these edges add up and all that kind of stuff, but overall, I think that there's a place for analytics in football, and there should be, and every team should follow them and use them and all this kind of stuff. But I also do think that there's some space too for. Situationally, is this the right call? Is this the same call I'd make again, week 1 against the Packers. I think there's some space to say that there's an argument to be made that you shouldn't just follow the numbers every single time because there's a 0.7% edge you're getting from going for it.
Frank, can you help me understand why Baltimore abandoned its running game in the other contest? I never understood that watching it.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody would ever admit to this, but I think the Ravens saw Patrick Mahomes drive down on the first drive of the game, look great, and they panicked immediately. They just thought, oh, we're in trouble here. This is the chance. This is Patrick Mahomes. I think they got a little, the moment at that point got a little too big for them because there's no reason for them to have 6 handoffs to running. I think it was 6, right? 5 or 6 handoffs to running backs all game. Terrible. The game script was never that bad. You're down 10 points early in the fourth quarter. That's not terrible. That's not some like unwinnable game where you need to drop back every single pass just to hit something. You could have still run the ball all the way up until about midway through the fourth quarter. Whenever the Isaiah Likely interception happened when Lamar threw it over the middle in triple coverage, which is a terrible play, by the way, but they could have done so. This is a team that just got away from what it did so quickly, and we saw them lose composure and their poise, and I just think it really, truly was. They saw Patrick Mahomes start hot, and they just freaked out. I hate to say it that way, and nobody's ever going to admit that, but you could almost tell. And again, based on some of the body language and some of the things that happened and the penalties and interceptions and helmet throwing and whatnot, I really, truly think the Ravens just panicked in a big moment. And part of that was abandoning their run game when they had no reason to abandon the run game. Gus Edwards had like 3 carries, and one of them was a 15-yarder. I mean, just, what are you doing? I'm totally with you. I think they screwed that up. I think they really screwed up their play calling just because they fell behind a little bit early on.
Frank, I respect your opinion because you've been watching football a long time. Is Mahomes the best ever? Where's he at on your list?
It's really tough. I think there's 2 categories of like who has the best career/resume ever, and Brady's obviously that answer. I don't think that's even a question. Like, I mean,
I agree.
He's done far and beyond what anybody else has. But when you're just talking about one game in their prime, who would you take? I mean, Rodgers obviously is up there for me. Brady's still up there for me. So is Peyton Manning. So John Elway, for me, anyway, is up there. Drew Brees actually is up there for me. I think he's really underrated all time. Marino. I mean, but look at the names I just listed off. And we're talking about a 28-year-old guy who, I mean, he's got 10 good years left in him. And he might put all of these arguments to bed before we're all said and done. I think the beauty of it this year was he clearly did not have a great team around him. I mean, they really struggled at receiver and drops. And I mean, this was not a great Chiefs team, and they're still going back to the Super Bowl. I mean, he's as good as any I've seen. I mean, there's nobody who I just listed off among the all-time greats who I've seen in my lifetime who I would say, yeah, what are we talking about? He's clearly better than Mahomes. There's not one of those guys, whether it's Elway or Rodgers or whoever. I think Mahomes stands right there next to him, and he might be better than them all. It's amazing we're having this argument about Patrick Mahomes right now because, like I said, he still has goods. If he wants to play another 10, 12 years, I don't see why he can't.
Yeah. Frank, there's this persistent rumor out there about Andy Reid that he might just go home after the Super Bowl and just retire. You hearing anything about that? You put any stock in that?
Yeah, I've heard the same rumors. I just don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's going to be asked about it next week. I mean, when we have more than enough time to ask him questions and thousands of people questioning him. I don't know if he would even say. I don't know if he wants to be a distraction. So maybe there's something to it, but he just seems like a football lifer, like he enjoys it, like he has fun with this. He's great at it. But I also see the other side. I believe he's going to be 62 years old. This would be his 3rd Super Bowl championship, which puts him in a really, really rare category. And if he wants to say, you know what, I've done everything I wanted to do, I just want to go relax, I want to sit on a beach somewhere, I'd understand it. He's at an age when not many guys like Belichick and Carroll are coaching into their 70s, really. So I could see it. I don't think it's going to happen just because I think Andy Reid is just too good at this and having too much fun, but I don't think that this is the craziest thing I've ever heard, that maybe he'd retire after his 3rd Super Bowl if he wins one. It's going to be really interesting to see how he handles that rumor this week when the media gets at him in Las Vegas.
Oh, wait a second. Your final thought. You're a Milwaukee guy. What do you think about Dame making his return to Portland tomorrow?
Oh, that's right. I didn't even think about it. I was at the game last night. I'm based in Denver, so went out to see him, and
sweet.
That's going to be fun. He is such a great player, and I think he's still struggling, honestly, with when to be the alpha because he's never really been the second guy. I mean, Giannis is obviously the Bucks guy. So I watched last night's game saying Dame really doesn't know when to take over yet. He isn't that guy, but I just think overall he's great for the game. He's an unbelievable player. I loved it. He's one of those players I just loved watching before he even came to Milwaukee. So him being on my favorite team has been really fun. He's great. He's had some great moments already with the Bucks, and I hope that Portland. I assume, right? Portland fans are going to cheer him tomorrow, right? Like there's not really.
Sure.
There's some ill will, I'm sure, but he's pretty beloved around there still, right?
Yeah, they love him here. He's beloved. He'll get a standing ovation, and we expect some type of video tribute too. So it should be quite a scene.
I hope so. I mean, he's one of those guys who's just good for the game, great player, great for that area for so long, and I hope that Portland fans, they're going to cheer him before the game, probably boom when the game starts because that's how it goes. Matthew Stafford in Detroit, and I that's what sports is all about. And I just hope that Portland isn't fired up enough to get a win over my Bucks. That's all.
No, that's great. Well, Frank, we appreciate the time, man. Great insight. Enjoy the build-up for the Super Bowl and enjoy the game, my friend. Thank you.
That's what I appreciate it.
There you go. I'll tell you one thing I do believe about Andy Reid, Godfather. If the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, he's definitely going to come back because they would have a chance to do something that no one else has done. Three-peat.
Yeah.
You can't turn down that opportunity. And not only that, but it's like, man, if I shut it down and I walk away from Mahomes, whoever steps in after me is not going to give up that gig.
Well, and Frank said it looks like he's having fun. Well, you know what? When you're winning Super Bowls almost every year, you probably are having some fun. And you get to coach a quarterback like that. Every coach's dream is having that guy who's a generational talent.
Oh.
And I think he ought to pull a Belichick. And I would stay with Mahomes as long as he wants to play because you're going to be in it every year.
It's just another day for you and me in paradise. All right, we'll come back. We got tickets to give away at 4 o'clock.
Michael Schechter, did we need that?
Yes, yes, it's Phil Collins' birthday today.
Well, I know, but did we need to hear Chad sing it?
Why are we not going all Phil?
It's his birthday gift to Phil.
We should put his drum fill on loop for the entire show.
Yeah.
They've got that on YouTube. It's amazing.
Yes.
All right, we got tickets to give away coming up at 4. And when we come back, we'll talk about NBA rule changes, why they may need to be instituted and what's going on with the league. And then if they do make any rule changes to help the defense, what would it be? We'll talk about it next on the Rip City Drive.
You're listening to the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad on 620 Rip City Radio. Brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Listen on your free iHeartRadio app for all your music, radio, and podcasts.
All right, Michael Shacker informed me of great news. It's Phil Collins' birthday. I didn't know. I love Phil Collins. I feel bad.
I didn't send him a card. Did you?
No. I don't need to because I've supported enough of his music over the years that it's like sending a birthday card. But this is my favorite right here. Is Phil Collins.
Oh, you're going to do the drum?
We're having technical issues. Let's go out to the phones. Rich in Canby wants to talk about the Super Bowl. San Francisco, a 2-point favorite right now over Kansas City, which is pretty wild. Hey, Rich, appreciate the phone call. You're up on the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad. What's your take on the matchup?
Hey, Chad. Hey, Dwight.
Hey.
Can I first start out by saying that you guys are the best tandem in sports radio, in my opinion.
Wow.
You get your job done and you have fun. And well, thank you.
You're a smart man. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Rich.
Okay, so this is my reasoning here. So San Francisco has a very disciplined defense. Very, very disciplined defense, unlike Baltimore's. Now, what I mean by that is that Baltimore's defense, I think, was baited into getting those personal foul penalties by Travis Kelce. Right, do you agree?
Yeah, there's no question. Absolutely baited. Travis Kelce was working their domes.
Okay, yeah, he was. He was a very brilliant guy. But that's not football, if you ask me. But that's a different story. But anyway, and this is a reason why I believe the betting odds are in San Francisco's favor right now. Because I think KC is going to have a problem with San Francisco.
All right, there you go. He thinks they're going to have a problem with San Francisco.
Yeah, it's possible. Certainly, they looked awfully good against Baltimore. That's all I'll say there. But he could be right. Who knows? I mean, these games are really hard to pick.
All right, let's go out to – actually, let's talk about this, Godfather, because I teased it. I want to make sure we pay it off. NBA scoring is up. You may have noticed. There are guys who are going wild. Luka scored the fourth most points in NBA history in a game with 73. We saw Embiid go for 70. There have been players who have just been exploding, and offenses are up across the league. Indiana, for most of the year, has been averaging what would be an NBA best for a season in points per game. The reason is because of rules, right? I mean, everything's been set into place to benefit the offense because the league wanted more scoring after what we experienced in the early 90s.
Yes.
But I guess my question would be, has it gone too far in the other direction?
Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily an overcorrection on those rules either, Chad. I think it's more the proliferation of three-point field goals have driven the scores up, and they've also, not just getting 3 points off a shot and so many more of them being made, but the fact that it has stretched the floor so much, you have to defend three-point shooters so the middle is wide open. Drivers are getting to the basket easier. Pick-and-roll rollers are getting to the basket easier. So you have a real problem there. And I do think that the game probably needs a little more balance. Now, I don't want to ever go back to those days where the Pistons and the Knicks were just beating people up with their defense. That's not what I like. But there are solutions, I think, Chad, to bringing the scores down and giving the defense a fighting chance at least.
You've mentioned this. I've heard a couple of people talk about this recently. Should they bring back the hand check?
Yeah, I think that's a good first step. I think if you allow hand checking, players get used to using it the right way. It's going to take a while, too, because they're not used to being able to use their hand. It's not just touching the guy. It's actually gripping the guy.
Yeah.
And I still go back. Everybody always told me, when Terry Porter gets that big hand on your waist, you're like paralyzed. It's not like you just can't go.
Death grip.
You can't go where you want to go. And that changes a lot. They used to also allow screeners to be bumped after they set the screen and they're getting to the basket. And so if you bump them, you slow their progress, throw the timing of the pick and roll off. So that helps you defend the pick and roll, which is really one of the big problems defenses face nowadays. The pick and roll is getting so tough to guard. So those two things would be one thing. The other interesting one that I keep hearing is people wanting to limit the number of threes that you could take in a game. And I just thought that might be fun to try in the G League and see what happens.
Yeah.
But the number thrown around is 33. You can win games taking 33 threes, you know, as long as you make them, but no more. And you can either use them when you want to use them or you save a few in your back pocket for late in the game when you might be trailing by 3.
I think Portland was 6 of 33 the other night against Chicago.
Yeah.
They hit the mark.
Yeah.
33.
They'd like to have made a few more is all.
That would be interesting. I don't think the league would ever do it, but it would be interesting to see the strategy there.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you could do is once a team has reached that limit, if they take a 3, it's a 2.
Yeah.
That's how you solve that issue.
Yeah, so you can't entirely sag off. Yeah, people would say, well, they're out of threes. Just sag off their outside. You got to sag off Dame. I mean, he's not going to get 3 for that shot, but he's still going to make enough 2s to make it worthwhile. So, yeah, I think it sets up a lot of new strategic things that might be fun to deal with.
If it's not hand check, what else could you do defensively or allow that would help limit the ridiculous scoring that's going on?
You could allow flat-out zones and not call defensive 3 seconds in the key. Just allow zone, which would really cut away a lot of those shots in the basket because you see a guy like Wembanyama, he would just sit under the basket, and it would be really difficult for you to get to the basket on him.
I got to be honest with you. I was rooting against Luka the other night. I did not want him at the beginning of the fourth quarter. He was sitting there on like 65. I thought he was going to take down Kobe. I didn't want that. I want Kobe to sit there at 81. I like that. But he's under real threat right now with the way these guys are putting up points.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that is people like it. I know they like it. It doesn't necessarily lead to wins. Some of these big scoring games, the team they played for didn't even win the game. And that's when you get some big scores because you got to keep that guy in the game with 60 points because you're trailing. So you got to keep having him shoot the ball. Whereas, you know, if you're up by 25 points, you saw Dame and CJ in their days in Portland ask out of games when they had a chance to score a lot more points.
Would you rather score 82 and top Kobe or win the NBA scoring title for a season?
Oh, I think winning the scoring title is a lasting thing. Now, scoring 82, but, you know, people are they're going to always question that. Well, he had this or he had that, playing a terrible defensive team, whatever. But if you lead the league in scoring in a year, man, you're bringing it every game.
All right, take a listen to this. We could do this for the next 10 hours. Oh, come on. I can't find the one I want. Come on, Phil. I'm trying to support you and your birthday. Help me out. Whatever. Oh, it loops for 10 hours after you get there. Oh, okay. I mean, I'm telling you, we could just roll this for the next 10 hours if you want. The greatest drum fill in the history of drum fills right here. Happy birthday, Phil Collins. That's not bad.
I've been hypnotized.
Dude, the coolest thing is when I went to go see him in concert, and this song was playing through, and then right when they got to the drum fill,
oh, man,
I looked around the arena. Everyone was doing air drums all at the same time. It was freaking awesome. Against all odds. This is the story of my love life right here. Against all odds. This is a good song. All right, coming up next, Trailblazer tickets. Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. Also, Dwight gave me some very annoying news, too. I'll ask him about that. And we're going to hear from Tom Brady talking about culture and accountability. I can't believe what you told me. I don't want this to happen. I'm going to root against it.
Chad, it's just my duty to annoy you at least once a day.
All right. Good thing you're going to be in a cooler in less than 2 weeks. Get the Rip City Drive.
to know.
From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
Boy, how about your Trailblazers last night hammering the Sixers by 26. Jeremy Grant, game high 27. Scoot Henderson, 22 off the bench. Tomorrow night, Damian Lillard will make his return to Portland. Bucks and Trailblazers from Moda Center. Tip-off at 7, game day at 4:30. All here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Scoot Henderson and Shaden Sharp have been named to the NBA Rising Stars game during All-Star Weekend. From the NFL, the 49ers are a 2-point favorite over the Chiefs. Super Bowl 58 from Vegas, Allegiant Stadium, Sunday, February 11th, kickoff at 3:30. Ben Johnson has ended interviews and will return to Detroit as their offensive coordinator. With Johnson out, it appears the Hawks' top 2 candidates are Dan Quinn and Ravens defensive coordinator Mike McDonald. More of the Rip City Drive is coming up in just a couple of moments. We got Trailblazer tickets to give away at 4 and 5, and then we'll talk NBA at 4:20 with Sean Hyken of the Rose Garden Report.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio.
I don't really want him to win a lot of games because I'd like to see him get one more lottery pick. But, yeah, last night's game was fun, and I'm so excited about the Blazers' future. And that's pretty much all I got.
Rev, appreciate it, buddy. Good to hear your voice. I appreciate that phone call.
Yeah, good takes, except for the issue. The location isn't a problem. The traffic issues will be mediated. You don't put something like that in without making allowances for the traffic, for public transportation. I think those are all a part of the plan.
Was he calling us from a cattle auction? There's a lot of stuff going on in the background.
I kind of wondered what was going on in the background.
I've been to a few cattle auctions during my days in Oklahoma.
Oh, really?
I'm not going to lie, that's some fun. I don't know what's going on or how you pick out which you want or whatever, but I had an uncle that had an eye for cattle, so he knew what he was looking for. He's like, yeah, watch this. And then it's just like, whoa, wheeling and dealing, baby, wheeling and dealing.
Huh.
A lot of crazy stuff going on in Oklahoma.
What did he pay for a cow?
I don't remember the exact cost. That was a long time ago. But I like moo-moos. I like cows. I'm a big fan of farm animals, and I wish that I respected more at the time I was doing it, living out in the country. There's something nice about being out and away from everything.
Yeah.
Literally. All right. Let's hear this from Tom Brady. You and I always talk about culture, coaching, accountability, something you don't see maybe as much in sports today as
especially in the NBA.
We did previously. Tom Brady was on Pat McAfee, and they asked him about his time with Belichick. Some of this I believe. Some of this I think he, kind of romanticized a bit. But take a listen to Tom Brady. There's Tom Brady. I really like what he said about the respect level for Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
My guess would be playing for Bill Belichick's mostly a pain.
Yeah.
Where you get tired of him. He's always on you. He's got those team meetings where he goes through the film and calls out everyone in front of everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So he probably wears on you. But you can tell that Tom Brady respected Belichick because when he would come to him, Brady knew that he was putting as much time into the film and study that he was. Yeah. So his advice and his coaching came from a good place because they both wanted to accomplish the same thing. Now, I think it was a little more embittered at the end than what Brady let on there,
Sure.
but that happens. They were together for a long time, and it's okay. And I think as time goes on, they'll really look fondly upon the years they spent together.
Yeah, I heard that interview, and he also got to the point where he talked about accountability, Chad, and he talked about, he was held accountable. And so by him being accountable, his teammates accepted accountability too. Because if the best player on the team, the greatest of all time, is held accountable by the coach, well, you're not going to complain about being held accountable either. And he always felt Bill held himself accountable too. So when you have that kind of atmosphere, that's real culture. That's a culture. And he talked about Brady, who's a pretty good businessman right now, talked about how accountability is very important in the business world too. And I agree with that too.
Yeah, that's sharp. It's going to be interesting to see how well he makes that transition when he jumps into the booth for Fox next year.
Oh, yeah. He talked about being very excited to do that.
You think he's nervous at all for that in a different role?
He probably would be. Yeah, I think he would be. But I don't think he has any trouble controlling his nervousness. That'd be my guess.
He's used to big game moments, right?
Yeah, and I bet he's nervous before games. I'm sure he was. Most of these guys were.
How can you not be?
Yeah.
If you're not,
Some
then-
guys claim not to be.
Yeah,
but-
well, I don't believe them.
yeah.
Because I think that nervousness is what drives you to focus. My guess would be MJ got nervous before games. All the guys that we grew up loving. Joe Montana, well, Montana maybe not.
Bill Russell used to vomit before every game from nerves. And they said there was one time he didn't, and the teammates were really worried. We're in for it tonight. Bill's not really focused on this one. But, yeah, that's a symptom of being that nervous.
So how does accountability look in the NBA?
Well, I think it's holding all your players accountable for what they do on the floor. And that means not only the seventh man, but the number one man. And if you can get away with yelling at him, not necessarily, you don't have to yell, and I don't think there's much yelling done anymore, but holding them accountable in a film session, for instance.
If you see mistakes clearly made by the star player, point it out.
Point it out. Look, you should not. Why did you go under the screen here? You can't go under that screen. He's too good a shooter. Come over the top. We'll get you some help. We'll show on the other side. You know, just correct them and let everybody in the room see, yeah, I'm correcting our number one guy. Well, the number 5 guy is not going to get upset then.
Yeah, that's a great point. How can the number 5 guy be upset if the number 1 guy's getting called out?
And especially if the number 1 guy takes it well, doesn't get upset, doesn't walk out of the meeting complaining about being called out. If he accepts it, that, yeah, you're right.
Well, how does a younger coach in the league know when he can hold everyone on the team accountable? Is that a conversation you have? I mean, how do you know when you know?
Well, you have to earn the respect of the players, but you also have to just do it. And they'll either take it or not. Then it comes down, what kind of backing do you get from the front office? Do you think Eric Spoelstra has had any trouble with that particular thing?
No,
because he knows the front office is.
Well, the classic story of accountability was the story that you heard from a Heat player at the time where they're in the middle of practice. Spoelstra is bitter because the guys aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. So he lines them up on the wall and coming down the stairs, Pat Riley, right?
Yeah.
He looked him in the eye and said, look, this is my coach. I back him 100%. If you got a problem with that, my door is always open. Yeah.
Yeah, come see me.
In other words, I'll find you another place to play if you don't want to abide by the way we do things here.
That's exactly what they do, too. That's the way it works.
I guess the best way to do it, even if you're a young coach, just hold guys accountable. And if they don't like it, they don't like it, but at least you can do it your way. I guess the important thing you've always told me about is that you got to make sure that what you're coaching and showing them is going to end in positive results on the floor.
Yeah.
Or then they'll start to doubt you.
They used to talk about the Atlanta Braves when they won all those division titles in a row. A guy in the big leagues told me, you watch. Some guys only last a year there. When they find a guy that doesn't fit their culture, out of there in a year. They don't care what the contract is or anything else. They'll dump him. They'll trade him for lesser pieces just to get rid of him. And I think teams have to do that kind of thing if people aren't fitting their culture.
Is Malcolm Brogdon going to be here after the February 8th deadline? We'll ask Sean Highkin next from the Rose Garden Report here on the Rip City Drive.
The Rip City Drive, brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Here on 620 Rip City Radio. Listen on your free iHeartRadio app for all your music, radio, and podcasts.
All right, Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad. We appreciate your time. Always very happy to welcome our next guest from the Rose Garden Report, independent coverage of your Portland Trailblazers. Sean Highkin is back. Sean, good afternoon. It's great to have you on the show. I want to start out with this, the game that's coming up tomorrow night. Dame's going to make his return to Moda Center, his first trip back to Portland since a trade during the course of the summertime when he became a Milwaukee Buck. What are you expecting from Dame tomorrow night? How do you think he'll approach this game?
Honestly, I don't think he's going to have a very good game, which I've covered games like this before, back when I used to be in Chicago and I used to cover the Bulls. My last year there was the year that Dwayne Wade was on the Bulls, and I went and covered the first game he played against the Heat in Miami, and he had a terrible game. I think he shot like 3 for 11, and then he was talking afterwards about how he was just his head was just not in it, and he was so thrown off by all the tribute videos and about going to the arena that he played in for the first decade plus of his career, and having to remember to walk into the visitors' locker room instead of the home team locker room, and knowing how the league works and how all this kind of stuff works, and the way guys, especially somebody who was as synonymous with Portland for as long of a time as Dame was here, as in that way, I would not be surprised. I suppose it's possible that Dame could just come in and drop 50, and it's oh yeah, this is a classic Dame game. But I actually wouldn't be surprised if he had kind of an off night shooting, just because of how. And in fact, I think Dame is probably feeling like he just wants to get this over with, just like everybody else. To be honest with you.
Sean, what do you expect from the crowd, the reaction, and have you heard anything about them preparing a tribute video for Dame?
I would imagine there will be some sort of video. I don't know if it's going to be a 10-minute thing because
yeah.
He's not retiring, but
right.
I think it's probably going to be. They did a little thing for CJ. They did a little thing for Nas and Nurk earlier this season. They'll do something for Dame, probably a few minutes of that during one of the first timeouts. I don't think they want to make it into a whole it would be one thing if it was he announced that he's going to retire at the end of the season, and then they do a whole halftime ceremony or something like that. But I think this is more I don't think they want to completely overdo it. They want to do enough to thank him for what he's done for the franchise over the 11 years that he played here. But I think it's going to be probably a little bit more low-key than people are expecting, and it's probably going to be, a couple-minute video. They're, going to get a standing ovation, all that kind of stuff. And as far as the reaction from the crowd, I would be shocked if it was anything other than, 99.9% positive, even though I know, there was a lot of stuff this summer as far as all the rumors and the drama and the leaks and all that kind of stuff. But I think in the end, people kind of felt after everything shook out as though, the trade, it kind of worked out well for everybody, where, a lot of fans, I think, feel like Joe did well on what he got back in the deal, or at least better than if he had traded him, maybe somewhere else that he wanted to go to, and that Dame ended up in a spot where he has a real chance to contend. So I think, for however contentious some of the stuff this past summer was, I think it's going to be almost entirely positive tomorrow.
We're talking with Sean Highkin from the Rose Garden Report here on the Rip City Drive. DeAndre Ayton, his last 4 games, 18 points, 17 rebounds, 20-12, 22-12, and last night, 18.6 rebounds. He's playing good basketball. What do you think is the best explanation for this recent spurt?
Well, part of it is just that he's getting healthy, because he missed a month with that knee injury, and then when you miss that much time, it takes a little bit to kind of get back in rhythm and get used to playing with guys that really he hasn't played with for that much of the season. Because you have to also remember that in the early part of the season, Anthony Simons missed the first 6 weeks with the thumb injury. So part of it is just getting healthy and getting all their guys back, but the team has also, their point guard, whether it was Anthony Simons, Malcolm Brogdon, Scoot Henderson, guys I've noticed, and guys have confirmed this when we've asked them about it, and Chauncey has talked about this too. They are making much more of a concerted effort to actually start running plays for him and start finding him for lobs and looking for him and involving him and stuff. And so I think a lot of those factors kind of are combining to lead to this recent uptick. Now, of course, we'll see if it continues or, if it's a sustainable thing. But for right now, I think everybody is very encouraged by what they've seen from Aiden over the last week or so.
I want to revisit this with you again, Sean, because we've talked about it before, I know. But we've seen, I think, a pretty good uptick in Scoot's performance, especially late in games. And I know at some of these times he's not playing against starters and all. But do you think he has a chance to play his way into the starting lineup, or do you think this is going to be his role the rest of the way?
If I had to guess, and this is, of course, barring injuries or barring,
Sure.
I don't know what is or isn't going to happen at the trade deadline. Maybe, like, by necessity, he starts at some point. But I think they're pretty comfortable for right now and for the foreseeable future keeping on bringing him off the bench. I think they feel like, and Chauncey has talked about this before. He talked about this actually pretty early on in the season when Scoot first came back from the ankle injury and then started coming off the bench, that he thinks it's good for him to see the game develop for maybe the first 5 or 6 minutes and watch it and kind of see what, how things are going from the bench and then come in and kind of do what he can do. And I understand. I mean, there's multiple sides to this argument. I obviously understand this idea that, like, he's the number 3 overall pick. He needs the reps. He needs to just be out there and get thrown into the fire. But I think they also kind of feel like it's going to be better for him long term if he stacks up positive performances like he has been, and they feel like, at least for the rest of this season, that's more likely to happen if he keeps coming off the bench and he keeps, being in this role that frankly has been working for him. So I would guess, unless there's like some ton of injuries or, a bunch of trades or something like that, something to that effect that necessitates him being in the starting lineup, I think that at least for the rest of this season, he's going to continue to come off the bench.
Hey, Sean, what do you expect to happen with the trade deadline that's coming up a week from Thursday, February 8th? The early thought is that Brogdon would, likely be moved. That appears to have cooled. So what do you anticipate happening with the deadline coming up?
Not a whole lot. I think there's still there's a reasonable chance something does happen with Brogdon, but that's by far the guy that's the most likely. I don't think anything's going to happen with Jeremy Grant. I think that's, I think from both ends, Jeremy, I talked to him last week and he told me that he's comfortable here and doesn't really feel like he needs to go somewhere else. And the team, I know, values him. And he unlike Brogdon, the thing with Brogdon that's interesting is he makes sense to move because of what we just talked about. You want to open up more minutes for Scoot and for, Shaden Sharp and for all these guards that they have. Jeremy Grant is not taking minutes from anybody that needs them. Like, having him in the starting lineup, getting the amount of shots that he's getting, is not blocking anybody's development. So I don't really expect anything to happen on that front with Shaden, or not with Shaden, with Jeremy. Now, the Brogdon thing is interesting because it does make sense to, if you can get a, good first-round pick or some sort of young player that's actually somebody that you want to add to your core to build around, it would make sense to do that. But I also, I know they really value Brogdon as a stabilizer and as somebody for Scoot to kind of lean on as he learns how to play point guard in the NBA. And I don't know. I could see it going either way, but I wouldn't expect a full teardown. I wouldn't really expect a whole lot of moves on any front. I mean, maybe I think Brogdon's still the most likely to get moved, but I don't think it's like 100% chance that even that happens.
Sean, I think that's a great point on Grant in terms of he's not blocking anybody. And whereas in the guard situation, there are a lot of guards there that they'd like to get on the court, right. I'm sure. I'm wondering, you mentioned Sharp. What's the latest on him? What do you know? Are we getting close on him getting back?
Maybe. I don't think they know yet. They were supposed to. So yesterday was 2 weeks from when they said he would be reevaluated in 2 weeks. So I think at some point this week they're going to do follow-up scans and then they'll see how it looks. I have seen him out, doing some not like full workout stuff or full like scrimmages, but I've seen him out on the court at least going through some stuff. So he isn't completely immobilized with this abdominal thing. So I don't think it's really getting to the point where like they might need to think about surgery or anything like that. It seems like it's progressing okay. If I had to guess, and this is not, I'm making this very clear, this is not sourced info, this is just my guess as to how what might happen. Let's say, he has the MRI at some point this week, and they say, it's progressing, and he, things are going well, and there hasn't been any setbacks, and it hasn't gotten worse. I would guess that they probably just, say he'll be reevaluated in a couple weeks again, and then just have him actually come back during the All-Star break, or after the All-Star break, rather. He was just announced today as participating in the Rising Stars game, or at least being named to it. I don't think he's actually going to do the Rising Stars game, because I don't think they're going to tell him to go do an All-Star event when he's been out with this injury. But I think, if I had to guess, I think he probably plays after the All-Star break.
Sean Highkin, Rose Garden Report here on the Rip City Drive. We have two more questions for you. One of the things that you pointed out in your piece that you had up after the 1-6 road trip was the goals that Chauncey was looking to get from these guys this year. And one of those things was ball movement with an increase in assists. And they weren't able to do that on the road trip and for the most part of the season. But we've seen after this latest road trip and in the last couple of games at home, the better ball movement. I think they had 29 assists last night. I'm sure Chauncey Billups likes that. What do you make of the recent uptick in assists and the better ball movement and player movement we've seen from this group?
Well, it's something that they actively worked on addressing after that road trip. Chauncey has talked before about how after that 62-point loss in Oklahoma City, they had this whole team meeting where everybody kind of said what they needed, which, you hear about all the time for teams that are in the position that these guys are in where they're losing as much as they are, that they have these team meetings. But really since then, the way that they've played, they've looked a lot more like the early season Blazers, where it's like, hey, they're losing a lot of these games, but they're staying in them and they're competitive. Then they look like the team that was on that road trip. So I think they actually have been making. Maybe part of this is just getting a lot of their guys back and getting healthier and guys, getting to play with each other more often. But you have seen an actual uptick in that, and it's something they've actively been working on.
Okay, let's get to this now. League-wide issues, Sean. So much is being talked about right now by, the offensive explosion we've seen and whether the league needs more balance or not in the way these things are played. And there's talk about making some changes in the way you can defend. One of them, of course, is bringing back the hand checking, being able to bump a screener once in a while. The other thing I heard today that I thought was unique that I'd throw out there for you, there are people talking about limiting the number of threes a team could take. Like, okay, you get 33 threes. You're going to blow them all out early when you're hot. You're going to save a few for the end of the game. I just thought that might be kind of an interesting way to combat all these games we see with so many threes taken.
That I don't really see as a realistic solution. I understand where that's coming from, but then it's going to get into this whole thing of what if somebody runs out of their allotted quota of 3-pointers, then then do they, if they take another one, do they get a technical foul? Or that seems kind of unwieldy to me. But I do think that at some point, maybe this summer when the competition committee meets, it might be something that they look at as far as changing some of those defensive rules like you talked about. But it has been interesting to kind of watch the way it's being talked about over the last couple of weeks when we've had all these, 60 and, in the case of Luka and Embiid, the 70-point games. It having 4 of those in a week, I think it's interesting, and I understand why they're talking about maybe needing to do something to curtail it. But at the same time, it seems like that's what fans like right now.
He's with the Rose Garden Report. It's Sean Highkin who is with us here on the Rip City Drive. Sean, really appreciate the time. Always love talking hoop with you. Enjoy the game tomorrow night. It's going to be a lot of fun at Motor Center. We appreciate it. All right, Godfather, we'll get to it at 5:20. We're going to break down this return of Dame at Motor Center tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I do like the idea of Grant. You don't have to force him out or rush him out right away because they've got no one else that can play that position right now. Jeremy Grant, they need him on this team. And you and I were talking about this the other day. It's okay if you're a real rebuilding squad to have a couple of veterans who can help stabilize things as you continue to move forward with your new plan, right?
Yeah. And unless, look, if somebody came to them and really needed a power forward for the stretch run and was willing to overpay to get him, go
That's
ahead.
a different story.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, I don't think you market him. You don't go out and say, what am I bid for him? I think the problem is the backcourt, and it would not harm them at all to thin out the backcourt a little bit, make it easier for the coach to get playing time for the 2 youngsters.
I've been impressed with Grant this year. I didn't know what to expect from him after getting that massive deal.
He's been better this year.
Better, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned about his game, and this is probably coming from the encouragement from his coaches to say, hey, we need you to be more aggressive on the offensive end.
Yeah.
Like the game against Chicago, the Blazers were struggling to make shots. He was attacking the rim. He got to the foul line, put up 16 free throws. He's better at driving off the bounce than I realized.
The other thing I think that's really helped is playing Walker on the other forward spot.
It's freeing him up.
It has, because he's conscious of the need for rebounds up front. And now I don't think he's quite as concerned because he knows the other guy's going to get him. And that takes some pressure off of him and frees him, I think, for a little more offensive work and maybe a little more work at the defensive end, too, where he's been okay. And I think that's been a big move. Injecting Walker into the starting lineup was a very big move.
I know the game was out of hand when Scoot was going off. I still like to see him play like that.
Oh, sure.
Man,
Absolutely.
It was nice.
Yeah. Aggressive, smart, more confident. Although I don't know if he can get more confident.
I think he believes in himself, yeah.
Yeah.
I think what I like about that is I like young players collecting numerous sequences in a row where you get multiple games where you play well, you're doing some good things where he can continue to build on that.
Yeah, I'd like to see him, if you're not going to start him, I'd like to see him at the end of games a little more often, which they haven't been doing. He hasn't been playing the last 5 or 6 minutes of the game.
That's my dream tomorrow. He v. Dame
Head-to-head,
late in the
right?
game, head-to-head. Sink or swim, baby.
No, I can see it. I can see it, Chad.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, I think because defensively, he's getting to be a pretty tough guy. And Dame would be a real test for him, though. And Dame's eyes would light up. A rookie and everything, chance to show that, hey, maybe you should have held on to me.
Yeah, my rough guess off the top of my head is that Dame's going to get a large dose of Kamara and Tease tomorrow. That'd be my guess. A large dose.
Yeah, that's who should be guard.
Those are the two guys. Your two best on-ball defenders, Matisse Thybulle and Tamani Kamara. And I would utilize those guys frequently on Dame. I would.
Who's going to defend Giannis then? They don't have that guy, do they?
No one has that guy.
I don't think they do. I mean, you can put Walker on him, but he's going to be in foul trouble after about 5 minutes.
Grant's not the answer. They don't have an answer for that.
No.
And most teams don't. They're like, well, we really don't have the Giannis answer.
Yeah.
He's a problem. That's going to be cool. I can't wait to see it. We'll get to that. We have another pair of Trailblazer tickets to give away. We'll do that coming up at 5 o'clock. Your chance to see the Trailblazers, courtesy of Dwight and Chad and your Portland Trailblazers. We're going to come back and a couple of different things we want to share with you in regards to the Super Bowl. Also, George Kittle, in his own way, showing leadership.
Yes.
A little confusing to follow, but I think I know where he was getting with that, so we'll play that for you next. All right, we're celebrating Phil Collins' birthday by playing his music. Thank you, Michael Shacker. All right, Godfather, take a listen to George Kittle. I want you to help decipher this for me.
Okay.
Tight ends aren't like quarterbacks behind the microphone. They're a little bit different, but I like George Kittle, man. A big-time playmaker and a key part of that 49ers team, which is going to be in the Super Bowl. And here he is talking about, coming back and his quarterback.
Did you say something good up there? I said they had us in the first half, not gonna lie. They had us in the first half, not gonna lie. But, and here we are now. And I called that in the second quarter. I said, I can't wait at the end of the game. I'm gonna be able to say this to the entire world. Called it. And then we did it. I can't wait at the end of the game. I'm gonna say, hey, they had us in the first half, not gonna lie. I can't wait till after the game and I get to say, you know what, they had us in the first half. Keep singing it, have fun, encourage you guys, right? You're the guy. Take that into existence.
There you go, George Kittle.
The back half of that is the actual recording of him telling Brock Purdy that. That's what he was doing in the second quarter. Can't wait till the end of the game to talk about it.
I remember a story that Lorenzo Neal told me once when he was with the Chargers and Drew Brees came in very early on in his career. And Lo Neal looked at him in the huddle and said, "You're our guy." And Brees later wrote about that quote from O'Neal in his book, talking about what that meant to him to have one of the vets on the team say, "Hey, you're our guy."
Wow.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
And so for a guy like Kittle, who's well respected by the guys, to remind his young quarterback, like, "Hey, you're our guy. Go encourage everyone."
Yeah.
That's good. Sometimes the young quarterback needs to hear that. Purdy's pretty even keel, but it's nice when you get veteran reinforcement and encouragement. It's cool.
Yeah, I think it's an affirmative action. You are taking real action in the affirmative to encourage him to lead other people. Look, these guys can use this from you, and that's telling him they all respect you. These guys respect you.
It's important. One thing that we brought up, you had mentioned this before. You look at the Super Bowl on the surface. We know Mahomes has been there and done that. This is his fourth Super Bowl in 5 years, which is ridiculous. But with Brock Purdy, when you think about Purdy, it's like, wait a second, he's got to be one of the least experienced quarterbacks in the Super Bowl. Yeah. And so I looked it up, and here's what I found out on that, Godfather, which is pretty amazing. QBs with the fewest starts before a Super Bowl, Jeff Hostetler and Vince Ferragamo are the only ones with fewer than 9 combined regular season and postseason starts. Kaepernick is number 3 on the list, who, of course, was in the Super Bowl quarterbacking the 49ers when they lost to the Ravens back during the 2012 season. So there you go, Ferragamo and Jeff Hostetler. Ferragamo lost his Super Bowl to the Steelers, but Hostetler, of course, got the victory against Jim Kelly and the Buffalo Bills as a 6.5-point dog.
Yeah, and Hostetler wasn't exactly a kid at that point. He had just been a kind of a career backup, right?
Yeah, and that game propelled him into getting more starts and eventually getting a fat contract from the Raiders. Good for you.
Yeah.
So there you go.
That was a definite game manager Super Bowl win.
So Purdy, we forget, but he played half the season last year, and he had a full season this year under his belt. So he's got roughly, I can't remember the exact number, 24, 25 starts. Yeah, that's quite a bit in comparison to Ferragamo and Jeff Hostetler and Colin Kaepernick. So that experience, or at least getting a full season under his belt and what he went through last year and getting playoff experience last year, that's going to help him as he gets ready for the Super Bowl.
That said, he's like the third youngest, right?
Yes.
Third youngest.
No. Third youngest was Kaepernick.
Oh, I thought
Purdy's not on the list.
Really?
Yeah, because he's got, I don't know, I took the top 3. The top 3 are Hostetler, Ferragamo, and then Kaepernick. But those guys are right there.
I thought those were the guys that had made the fewest starts.
That is correct. The fewest starts at 9. Hostetler and Ferragamo had 9 starts before.
Right, but I was talking
Super
about
Bowl.
Him being the third youngest to start.
You talking about age?
Yeah.
We're not talking about age. We're talking about starts.
No, I know you're not. I said.
Well, you're bringing something else into the mix. So
well, yeah, I was. I was saying, yeah.
I don't know what he is in terms of age.
I think he's the third youngest.
Okay, well.
But I'm just saying, some of those guys who had fewer starts were veteran quarterbacks. I think even Ferragamo had been around a while too.
Well, with Brock Purdy, the one advantage he had too, and maybe it helps him in this situation, maybe it doesn't, or maybe it helped him stepping in for the 49ers last year, the fact that he played a full college career at Iowa State.
Mm-hmm.
You know, getting all those starts under his belt, getting those extra reps, I would imagine that helps on some level, even though it's a college game. I don't know.
More and more guys are going to be getting a full career in college now that they're being well paid for it, especially the quarterbacks.
I think the Godfather just rolled his eyes at me a while ago. Did you roll your eyes at me?
Well, when you say youngest, you're talking about age, aren't you?
I was talking about the fewest starts.
I know. And I said, but he is the third youngest quarterback.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. You told me it is. I didn't look that up.
Okay.
So I'm going to trust you on that.
Okay.
So third
Thank
youngest. Who are the top two? Who are the two youngest?
I have no idea.
But you know he's the third?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Let's do a little quick Rabbi Google search right here, Godfather, and find out. What is the two youngest quarterbacks to start a Super Bowl? Two youngest.
Better yet, who is?
Start a Super Bowl. Dan Marino and Ben Roethlisberger remain the two youngest starting quarterbacks in Super Bowl history. There you go. I wouldn't have thought that. But I did go back and watch that Super Bowl the other day. I think it was Super Bowl 18, Dolphins and 49ers. San Francisco destroyed them. That 49er team was pretty good, too.
I was at that game, actually.
You were?
Yeah, wasn't that?
Stanford Stadium.
Yeah, I was. I was also at the one where they just beat the snot out of the Chargers. Remember that one? That's like the biggest rout of all time, I think. 52 to something.
They crushed them.
Jerry Rice.
49-24.
49.
Steve Young threw 6 touchdown passes.
Yeah. A big game for Steve.
All right. Dan Marino and Big Ben remain the two youngest quarterbacks to start in the Super Bowl. Marino was 23 years, 127 days old. Big Ben, 23 years and 340 days old when he started for the Steelers. The rest of the list includes high-profile names as well as a few of the casual fan may be surprised to see. Jared Goff, who lost to Purdy's 49ers in the NFC title game, was 24 years and 112 days old when he started for the Rams. Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Jalen Hurts, and Joe Burrow also make the list. So here's your top 10 youngest quarterbacks to start by age. Marino, Big Ben, Brock Purdy, third. David Woodley of the Dolphins. Jared Goff, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady. 8 is Jalen Hurts. 9 is Drew Bledsoe. And both Joe Burrow and Russell Wilson are tied for 10th. They were both 25 years and 65 days old when they got their first start. I had forgotten about David Woodley.
With good reason. You're supposed to forget about David Woodley.
Now that makes me wonder who's the oldest quarterback to start a Super Bowl.
That's a really good question.
I should know that, but I don't. I'll look that up too. All right, your chance at Trailblazer tickets are coming up next. And why exactly are the 49ers favored over the Chiefs when they got Patrick Mahomes? We'll explain that courtesy of Frank Schwab next.
what you need to know.
From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, it's now 5 o'clock. What's up, my friends? Chad here. The Trailblazers feeling good after hammering the Sixers last night. Jeremy Grant on fire, 27 points to lead the way. Scoot, 22 off the bench. Tomorrow, big night at Moda Center as the Milwaukee Bucks come to town. Damian Lillard makes his first trip back to Portland after being traded during the summer. Tip-off at 7, game day at 4:30 here on 620 Rip City Radio. Elsewhere, Scoot Henderson and Shaden Sharp have been named to the NBA Rising Stars game during All-Star Weekend. From the NFL, the 49ers today, a 2-point favorite over the Chiefs. Super Bowl 58, Sunday, February 11th from Allegiant Stadium. Kickoff at 3:30 on CBS. Ben Johnson has ended all interviews. He's going to go back to Detroit and continue as offensive coordinator of the Lions. It appears the Seahawks' top 2 candidates now, Dan Quinn and Ravens defensive coordinator Mike McDonald.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio. It's time for the big story of the day on the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad.
The San Francisco 49ers and Kansas City Chiefs are headed to the Super Bowl. Many football fans are furious since this was the exact Super Bowl in 2020. So panelists, in the spirit of this rematch, what are some other matchups no one wants to see? Arden.
Trump versus bidet.
Yeah. Marilyn.
Barbie versus the Oscars.
The big story of the day is powered by Powered Kia. The largest selection of Kias in Oregon is at poweredkia.com.
All right, it's Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday, and it's time to give away another pair of tickets. This is for the Detroit Pistons game coming up on February 8th. Your chance to win is right now. And Dwight and I were talking about a little Super Bowl history. How good was Johnny Unitas back in his heyday?
He was really, really good. He was the master of the 2-minute drill before anybody even knew what that was.
So he actually was hitting the 2-minute drill before the 2-minute drill was a thing.
His great receiver, Raymond Berry, used to be great at catching those sideline passes, right, keeping his feet in bounds, going out of bounds, and then he'd hit him with a long bomb, and he'd catch. I mean, they were ahead of everybody in the passing game. At that time, the passing game wasn't nearly as sophisticated as it is now.
All right, we gave you the youngest quarterbacks. Dan Marino and Big Ben are right at the top of the list. Number 3 is Brock Purdy, who's going to be starting this game coming up against the Chiefs. The oldest, of course, Tom Brady with the Buccaneers at 43 years of age. Tom Brady's number 2 at 41 years of age. Peyton Manning and Tom Brady both started a Super Bowl at age 39. Number 4 on the list, John Elway in his final game, 38 years of age. And then at 37, Elway, Brady, and Johnny Unitas. Roger Staubach at 35. And there are multiple quarterbacks, 4 to be exact, at the age of 34. So those are your oldest guys.
Yeah, I have to tell you about Johnny U, by the way, Chad. That was the day when quarterbacks called their own plays. And when they started sending plays in, there was no hand signals or speakers in the helmets. It was you used to use the offensive guards or tackles to bring the plays in from the sidelines. Unitas wanted no part of that. He was calling his own plays. And they say, believe it or not, just like you played in the park, he used to actually draw some out in the dirt in the huddle.
That's amazing.
That's what they did in those days. But the quarterbacks called all the plays. All the quarterbacks did. That was a big deal when they started. Paul Brown, I think, was the first coach to do it, sending people in with the plays.
I love that. When John Elway was given play calling duties from Dan Reeves in the 1991 season, the part that was tough for Reeves is that they would go into the huddle and break huddle, and he didn't know what the play was going to be. And he couldn't live with that. He wanted to know what was going on. So what they would do when they would break huddle, one of the receivers would give the signals over to the Broncos sideline so that Reeves knew what was going on.
So they reversed it.
Yeah.
The players gave the signals to the coach. That's great.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
that's a
through the
great
game
story.
plan, Elway was a part of the game plan through the week, and he had a wristband. And so that way there was different plays for down and distances and so forth, and he could choose whatever play he wanted.
Yeah.
The part that I admired about quarterbacks who would do that, it would seem easy to pick a play, but what if you just ran for a first down and you're winded, or you just got crushed by a 300-pound defensive lineman, you get your bell rung, and then you got to get up, and you got 40 seconds to get your wits about you and figure out what you want to run next. That's hard.
Yeah, and they did get their bells rung in those days. You've seen it. I mean, they really
You could
crushed
rough
people.
quarterbacks all the time.
Yeah, they roughed their. I mean, it was a brutal game in those days.
All right, all of that to be said, because we're going to honor Johnny Unitas right now, the 19th caller. Johnny Unitas wore number 19.
He did. Nice going, Chad.
Number 19, caller 19 will get a pair of tickets for the Blazers and Pistons right now. 503-248-0620. Fire away. It is your show and your tickets. You take it over. 503-248-0620. Caller 19 right now, 503-248-0620. Fire away right now, 503-248-0620. Caller 19 gets a pair of tickets for the Blazers and the Pistons coming up at Moda Center. Now, we're going to get to Dame and his return coming up here at 520, but we've been asking the question all day, and we've been thinking about this. You know, the line for the Super Bowl right now, San Francisco opened up as a favorite at 2.5. Right now, the line's at 2. I don't care what the line's at. I'm just confused as to why Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, after what they've done in the postseason, are not favored. Here's Frank Reich. Backup Bill, Frank Reich.
Yeah.
Here's Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports, explaining why the line is what it is.
It is interesting. I think that part of it is, I mean, from week one to now, the 49ers have been a better team. You look at some of the Chiefs' struggles during the season. I mean, the team lost to the Broncos and the Raiders. Raiders at home, it wasn't like they had this unbelievably great season. It's the worst season that the Chiefs have had in the Mahomes era, and that just kind of speaks to how high the bar was set there. But this wasn't a dominant team by any means during the regular season. They've really caught fire in the playoffs. Hats off to them. They're fantastic. But I think it just goes to the, when the odds makers make these lines and the power ratings still, are holding on to numbers that they had when the 49ers looked legitimately pretty unbeatable at times early in the season. It still hangs on to that, and they still, look at it and say, hey, the Chiefs are, a really, really good team, but the 49ers were too, and don't be a prisoner of the moment and recency bias and all that. So I understand why the Chiefs are favored, or why the 49ers are favored, but I think clearly the Chiefs are playing better right now.
All right, so this makes sense to me, Godfather. In Vegas, the odds makers, they've got, it's not just guys who get together and come up with the lines now.
Yeah.
You've got smart people with incredible computer programs where they set these power rankings so they know exactly what each of these teams is about, and they come up with the number. And, of course, the 49ers throughout the year have had one of the best rosters in football. They're one of the most talented teams in football, and that's how we get to where we're at. And while the Chiefs have definitely turned it around from what we saw in the regular season with the wins over Miami, Buffalo, and most recently Baltimore on Sunday, they were not a consistent team throughout the course of the season. In fact, they struggled mightily on offense throughout the year. So there you go. When he explains it like that, I understand it. I think where I get hung up on is very simple. Who's got the best quarterback in the game? That's Patrick Mahomes. Who's got the best coach? It's Andy Reid. And Shanahan's a pretty darn good coach.
Yeah.
And the better defense has been Kansas City. When it comes to handicapping a game, I'm not going to overthink it. I just look at coach and quarterback.
Well, who's played the best the last 2 weeks? Those are playoff games where the pressure is on to play your best, and you can make a case that the Niners were fairly fortunate to get through those 2 games.
Yeah, the first half they had against Green Bay and the first half against Detroit were awful on both sides of the ball. Out of sync on defense. You talked about the alignment and the issues they had stopping the run. That was bad. Brock Purdy, not particularly sharp. They overcame it and won. That's great. That's what good teams do. But that type of slow start against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid is bad because they're not going to gift you opportunities to get back in the game. That's just not their MO. That's not how they operate. They're too smart and too good for that. You mentioned it yesterday. Part of what made Mahomes so great this year is that he understood what his team was, what they weren't, and he embraced that and was like, okay, we'll just play it a little closer to the vest, and I'm not going to make a big mistake to put our team in dire straits. If you want to beat us, fine, but I'm not going to give you the game.
Yeah. Yeah. He's not going to be Brett Favre. He's not going to go out and cost you a game with a stupid decision, a crazy, ill-advised throw, or a fumble.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to take care of the ball.
Yes, and the reason why the Chiefs play that way now is because, and this comes from their championship culture, from Andy Reid being a good coach, but, you know, in years past, their offense was so dynamic. They could come out and play loosey-goosey.
Mm-hmm.
If they get down 2 scores, no problem.
Yeah.
Because they got the firepower to get back into a game with a couple of big plays from Mahomes and, you know, the pedals on the metal, they're fine. They can't play it that way anymore. They need to get the early lead. They need to be smart with how they handle certain situations early to make sure they're not in a situation where their offense is stressed trying to get back in the game. It's pretty simple.
I know you have no love for either team. Who would you rather see win?
It's painful. I really don't like either team. I really don't. So I don't have an answer to that question. I love the matchup because I think it's going to be a terrific football game. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to come down to the fourth quarter, and that's what I want to see. I want to see how the Chiefs handle that scenario, but most importantly, I want to see Brock Purdy. Because here's the great thing about Purdy, and everyone knows I've been talking about this for a long time about Purdy. I am convinced that this is exactly why you're up against it with Purdy at quarterback. That in this game against a quarterback like Mahomes, he won't have enough to get it done. But if he wins the game, what a story. The last player drafted gets a chance to play because of injury, capitalizes on the opportunity, gets better over the course of time, has a great nature about him, and wins a Super Bowl. What more could you want from a story? That would be phenomenal. And he beats Mahomes in the process.
Yeah.
You can't argue with that. It's a great opportunity for Brock Purdy.
Yeah. I thought you might be pulling for San Francisco because of the Denver connections with the 49ers. You got to admit, there's some pretty good Denver connections there.
Yeah, John Lynch.
Yeah.
And Shanahan, who as a kid was on the sideline in Denver for years growing up.
Yeah.
When his dad was an offensive coordinator, when Reeves was coach, when his dad was head coach.
Well, you have McCaffrey connection, too.
I love Ed McCaffrey. Someone put out on Twitter the other day, what's the first word that comes to your mind when you see this picture? It was a picture of Christian McCaffrey. I'm like, Ed.
Yeah.
Because I always think about his pops. What a great family.
His dad was a heck of a player.
I think his uncle, Billy McCaffrey, was a great basketball player at Duke. Ed was a great receiver with Denver. And his mom was a great athlete at Stanford.
Yeah.
The whole family.
Yeah.
It's amazing that we were joking about this the other day, but he's like the first, in my lifetime, dominant white running back that we've ever seen. He's amazing in my lifetime. And the guy is really good. And like his dad, he does, you can tell he's a McCaffrey because his preparation is unquestioned. He's can
tough.
catch. He's tough.
Yeah.
He can block. All the little things you want. Blitz pickup. He's a complete player. There's no weakness to his game. He's a fascinating football player, Christian McCaffrey.
Arguably MVP. He's the most important player on that team.
I've told you the story, but when I interviewed David Shaw when I was living down in the Bay Area, when McCaffrey was at Stanford, every week they would have what they call the McCaffrey Project, where the coaches would get together in a room, look at the opponent, look at the game plan, and the whole goal of that McCaffrey Project was simply to find different ways to get him the football so he could make an impact on the game.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was so dynamic. Special teams, receiving game, running game.
Well, and to the 49ers' credit, they're kind of doing the same thing. They've been creative on getting the ball to him. I think they should do it more than they have, but I think they're trying to keep him a little bit fresher. He'll be fresh for the Super Bowl. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a lot of touches in the Super Bowl.
If they're going to win that game, McCaffrey's going to have to be a big-time part of the game plan. And they also do a great job with Deebo Samuel, using him. Mm-hmm. He's a receiver, but for them, he's not. He's everything. Running back, receiver. Those two guys are big-time difference makers. And then you throw in Ayuk and they're tight end, Kittle. That's a pretty darn good lineup. And that's really what you got to tell Brock Purdy. You're not playing against Patrick Mahomes. You are, but you're not. You don't have to do all the things that he does. Look at all the wealth of talent we got around you.
You're the point guard. That's what he is. He's the point guard. Get it to the shooters.
Get it to the shooters. And that's a great way to approach it. That takes pressure off of him so he doesn't have to go out there and match, in his mind, think he has to match play for play with Mahomes. Because there's going to be times in the game where Mahomes is going to do the wow play.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. You just got to continue to go out and play your game.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Isn't that the way it's got to be done?
Yeah. They'd like to get a lead for once, too. One of these games have a decent first half.
I want to see that defensive line play a complete game.
Yeah.
With all those names, it's like, I don't understand. I'm frustrated with the 49ers because they have so much talent, so many good players. I don't understand these odd starts, especially with the defense getting out to slow starts.
They got a lot of money tied up in that defensive line, too.
Yeah, you might want to give us some production there, fellas.
Yeah.
All right, when we come back, we will dig into what's going to happen tomorrow night at Moda Center. What's the fan reaction going to be with Dame coming back? How's Dame going to approach the game? We have some insight on that. And how should the Blazers attack Dame? We'll talk about it all next on the Rip City Drive.
You're listening to the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad on 620 Rip City Radio. Brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Listen on your free iHeartRadio app for all your music, radio, and podcasts.
It's Phil Collins' birthday. You want to take a guess at how many number one songs he has?
Number one. Boy, those are rare. I would say 7.
That's exactly what he's got.
Get out.
7 number ones. Against All Odds, Susudio, One More Night, Separate Lives. That's a great song. A Groovy Kind of Love, Two Hearts, and Another Day in Paradise. Those are his 7.
Stuff there.
All right, coming up on February 9th, it's a Friday, a week from Friday. We're looking forward to this. We're going to do something for a very good cause, ALS Northwest. Chilling for a cause. Dwight and I are going to be out at the Jackson's Food Mart right over here across from the station at I-5 and 217 off of Bangy Road. And we're going to broadcast live from the 37-degree cooler for 3 hours. So we're going to be stuck in the cooler, bundled up, and we're going to be chilling for a cause. And all proceeds of everything we're going to do are going to benefit ALS Northwest. So getting a chance to see Dwight in the cooler for 3 hours is going to be quite a scene. And you can stop by and say hi to us, come back in the cooler, give us a shout, and you can also enter to win Trailblazer tickets if you stop by Jackson's Food Mart on the 9th. Now, the bigger thing that we have going on is our auction. So go to ripcityradio.com, go to our calendar page, and just scroll, and you'll see the icon for Chillin' for a Cause. When you click on that, the link, you'll see right there for the auction. And right now, we have items up for bid. It's live, and we want you to bid and make a difference for ALS Northwest. We have Trailblazer autographed team basketballs. We have autographed team pennants.
Good stuff.
We have a autographed Scoot Henderson jersey, which is probably something good to get now before his career continues to accelerate. And then he becomes a big-time star. We have the opportunity to play golf with Dwight now at Forest Hills Golf Club. We also have the opportunity for you to host the Rip City Drive. And something really cool, if you want to be a Trailblazer reporter for a day and join me at an upcoming game this year and be a part of the media, and you'll sit with me. I'll explain to you what's going on. We'll go down and take part in the post-game press conference. You'll be able to get access and see things you've never seen before.
You have to behave.
You got to behave.
Yep.
No cheering at press row.
Yeah.
And those items are up right now. And we also have Coors Light Silver seats, which we've sat in. Those are
great seats.
Great seats. In fact, I would encourage you to bid. And then what you can do is you get 4 tickets. You can sit in the Coors Light Silver seats, which are cushy, high-end seats. You got the little place for your beverage to keep it cold. You've got a cell phone charger. Just go in, put the bid in, and then divide it up between the 4 that you want to take to the game. That's an easy way to do it.
Yeah, split it up.
So go to ripcityradio.com, go to our calendar page, click on the icon, Chillin' for a Cause. You'll see the link for the auction and go bid on the items. We're raising money for ALS Northwest and awareness.
A great cause, I might add. I think it's a great cause. I'm really glad this is what's going to benefit from this. We're sitting there freezing, and it's for a good cause.
My grandfather, my mom's dad, died from ALS. And the worst part was I never got to hear him talk or see him walk. When I was old enough, he was already confined to a chair, and he lived to be, he was, stricken and lived for a long time afterwards, like another 20 years. But his mind was functioning properly. And so he would use a typewriter to communicate with me, or when a R-rated movie on HBO came on, he would give a moan, and that was the sign for my brother and I to get out of the room because he didn't want to pollute our minds.
Yeah.
But what I found was through time, with all the work that my grandma had to do to take care of him, there's a lot of needs, a lot of costs involved, and ALS Northwest is going to be there to support families in our community who are dealing with ALS. February 9th, the Jacksons off Bangy Road right here at I-5 and 217, 3 to 6 live from the 37-degree cooler. So please come out and join us, and be sure to go to the auction page and bid.
It's a real easy place to find, by the way. It's just right off the freeway. It's not a problem.
Right off the freeway. All right. Damian Lillard is going to come back to town tomorrow. And I guess the first question would be this, Godfather. What do you think the approach will be for Dame? Coming back home for the first time, playing at Moda Center, something that he probably considers his house and getting a chance to take on the Trailblazers. What do you think's going through his mind and the way he wants to approach the game?
Well, I'll tell you, I believe he's going to be on a mission, Chad. I really believe he's going to have a big game because, and you have to think back on the whole situation, the way it went down. But ultimately, people kind of have a way of forgetting this. Ultimately, his wish was not to leave. It was to stay here. Inevitably, it was to stay here. And then, of course, they had the draft. They drafted Scoot Henderson. It was obvious then he was going to be shipped out. And that was kind of against his wishes. He had just completed building the big house that he had outside of town. And a lot of things were going on in his personal life. And so he was intent on staying, seeing it through. And so I think there might be some revenge on his mind.
I agree. You go back to summertime, according to Chris Haynes, from the piece that he wrote, Lillard then said if a deal couldn't be worked out with the Heat, he would prefer to rescind his trade request and return to the Trailblazers. Cronin's response to the 7-time All-Star was there was no coming back. Lillard was shocked, sources said. And then at Media Day before the season, Cronin was asked by Aaron Finchers about this situation. Here's what he had to say.
So there was a report that at one point Damian opened up the idea of maybe returning, and you said, no, it's time for us to move forward. Did that happen? And if so, why did you make that decision then?
I told him I personally thought it was a bad idea. The trade request had not been rescinded, and for me, I didn't want that to go into the season. I thought, well, let's find something now instead. And that was my approach. Again, just to do what's best for us and find the best deal where hopefully we could all be happy, and we feel like we accomplished that, where the Trailblazers were really excited where we are, and we think he's got an incredible opportunity to compete at the highest level in Milwaukee.
All right, so I agree with Cronin. I think in the end, the Blazers got what they thought was a fair deal in return, and I think Dame wound up in a very good spot with a legitimate chance to win. I agree with your take that he's going to come out looking to have a big night because I look back at all the greats, no matter what the sport is. I always look at guys like Kobe or MJ. Anytime an athlete at a high level feels like he's been slighted just a little bit, they usually want to go out and send a message.
It's motivation.
It's motivation. And players who have been in the league for 10-plus years are always looking for any little bit of motivation to go out there and get them going for a game. So for Dame, I would expect him to come out and want to put on a show. And that's what I think he'll do. And I think his teammates, he doesn't even have to say anything to his teammates. I think they know how big the moment is for him, and they'll be there to help facilitate however he wants to attack.
Oh, they're going to know. By the time that game starts, they'll know all about it. They'll feel it in the arena.
Yes, that this is not your normal regular season game.
Right.
It's not. And that's cool. So on the flip side, if you're the Blazers, how do you want to approach this game? How should Billups approach this game, and how do you want to go at Dame? How do you handle it?
I think you get real serious about the game. It's like he's going to be coming at us. We got to go back at him.
Yes.
This is personal. This game's personal for him, so we have to make it personal for us too. I think what you do is what just about all the Milwaukee opponents have done this year, and that's single him out on defense as much as you can. Try to isolate him and take advantage of his defense and put him in pick and rolls, ISO if you can, but take a run at him. I think they have players who can do that. Brogdon could take him off the dribble, and they can run that pick and roll with Ayton and get some easy baskets, I think.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we'll see.
Yeah, treat him like the other teams do. Put him in situations where he's matched up, you've got an advantage, and you can score. I think that's a great approach. And then with their defense, like I mentioned before, Matisse Thybulle, Tamani Kamara, I think Dame's going to see a lot of those two guys.
Yeah.
Those are your two best on-ball defenders. Give him different looks. Be aggressive with him, and don't let him get into a comfort zone. Because you don't want him, if you're Chauncey Billups, you don't want Dame going off for like 45 or 50, right?
That's right. That's right. And he's real comfortable in that gym. We all know that. I think he's going to be a handful. I think he's going to open up going to the basket a lot because teams do that against the Blazers anyway, and he's so good at it. I think he gets it at least 15 trips to the foul line, too, because he gets the calls when he goes to the basket as well as anybody in the league does. And he's going to get real serious with that. Then he'll move out. He'll hit a bunch of threes. It's going to be a big night for him, I would expect.
What do you think is the ideal scenario for the game, for Trailblazer fans, how it plays out? Is it Dame has a big night and the Blazers win? Is it the Blazers dominate and shut down Dame? Or is it Dame go out, play huge, score 50, and the Bucks win? How do you think Blazer fans want to see it play out ideally?
I'm not sure they want to see him score because I think they still want the Blazers to win. And if Dame has a big night, they have a real good chance to win the game. They're going to love Dame before the game. He'll get his flowers before the game. He'll get a big ovation. They're going to play a tribute video at some point, I'm sure. And once the game starts, then it changes a little bit. Then he's not going to get that kind of attention. He becomes the enemy then. And I think Blazer fans want to win that game.
I agree with you. I think the majority of Blazer fans love Dame, but they're Trailblazer fans and will want the team to go out there and dominate and win the game. Now, I do think there'll be a few fans, who are bitter that he was traded, and they'll be pulling for Dame and the Bucks to win the game to prove a point. That would be my guess.
Yeah, those people will, yeah.
But I think Dame will be embraced. He's not going to get booed. I think he'll get a standing ovation the way that he should. And that's going to be awesome. How do you think Mark Mason will handle his introduction when they do the starting lineups?
Oh, it'll be big. It'll be big.
It won't be like Damian Lillard.
No, it's going to be the old letter O. He'll give the letter O one more workout on this one.
I want to play this for you. I was really surprised. You know, Chauncey Billups I thought was great last night when asked about this situation with Dame coming back. And I think the exact question was, did you try to prevent Dame from leaving? Did you ask him not to go? And here's what Chauncey had to say.
No, I didn't try to convince Dame to stay. You know, I always just wanted the best for Dame, and I didn't want to get in the way of that for my own selfish reasons. You know, bigger than this basketball thing is he's a friend of mine, and he's almost kind of like a little brother to me. And I felt like at that time, the best thing for Dame was to go do what he had to do. You know, and hopefully he get in a great position to go chase the championship. And obviously he's in a great position, so it worked out perfect. You know, I really do think it worked out perfect.
For him or for?
Well, for him, of course, for him. I mean, which is what it was all about. You know, he's and still at the end of his prime. You know, but those years go pretty quickly. You know, and I know that. So he'll be chasing it for a little while, you know, but obviously in the situation that we're in, you know, you don't want to see him in that type of spot where we're doing what we're doing and he's out there bumping and grinding and scrapping and clawing and getting 30s and 40s and we can barely win those games. It's just a tough situation to be in for him, but he never complained about it. You know, he's just a soldier, man. He came to work and did the best he could every single time. And I respect that about him.
You know, I appreciate this response from Chauncey because I think he was just being real. A lot of coaches would take the high road or say, oh, I'm only concerned about our team or whatever. They wouldn't deal with it. But Chauncey was pretty open about that. That was surprising to me. Very pro-Dame message there from Coach Billups, which is cool.
Very pro-Dame, I thought.
Yeah.
Almost anti-team in a way.
In a way. That's why it surprised me. I just didn't expect him to be that open in regards to exactly how I felt.
Yeah, it worked out well for Dame, but it's supposed to work out well. And I think Joe Cronin said it worked well for both sides. We'll see about that. We still don't know how it's going to, because some of these deals they've made have they're pending based on what they can get for the players they got in return. So we'll see how that works out.
But of course, if you were, you know, pro rebuild, then the Band-Aid had to be ripped off, right?
Yeah, I don't know that it's still been all the way ripped off, but that was a big piece of it, dealing him. Yeah.
What would be the all the way ripped off?
Well, I think,
moving on from Ant?
Yeah, moving on from most of the veteran players because you're using guys, blocking young players from getting playing time, and you're giving playing time to people who aren't going to be here. For instance, say you move Brogdon at the trade deadline. Why is he playing 30 minutes now, 2 weeks, when he's going to be gone in 2 weeks, you know?
Well, you told me why. You said that you're doing right by Brogdon for the way he's handled himself here in Portland.
Right. And I think they want to show people he's healthy because he's kind of been in and out of the lineup a lot lately.
Yeah. So, it's going to be fun tomorrow night. I'm looking forward to it. And, there's only one return, right? Each time he comes back, it'll be a little bit easier. But this first time, these players, we talk about, we were talking about quarterbacks or guys, Tom Brady and whether or not he would get nervous going on his first broadcast with Fox. I know Dame's going to be nervous tomorrow. I think it's going to be weird for him. I was talking about this with Burkhart last night, but he's going to walk into that arena for the first time ever and have to walk into a different locker room. And I'm wondering if he might get, tripped up for a moment and walk down the hallway and start heading towards the Trailblazer locker room. Like, it's just weird. Like, this is the first time where he's going to walk into the building and it's not going to feel like it always did.
Well, he's also going to find out the visiting locker room is not nearly as nice as the home locker room.
I hate the visiting locker room.
It's terrible.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's cramped.
Yeah.
By design. They don't want you to feel comfortable in there.
Yeah.
So that whole thing is going to be weird. And I would imagine for him, he made no bones about it. He loved it here. And this is a special place to him. And so that's got to be weird when he walks out there on the floor in different gear for the first time. And when he hears the crowd and the embrace. Because Dame, they may love him in Milwaukee, but you know how it is. He'll never be beloved anywhere else like he is here. This is always going to be his place.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it. Do you expect the Bucks to roll, or do you think Portland will give them whatever Portland's got? You're going to get their best from them tomorrow. They're going to be ready for this one, right?
Yeah, they might be ready, but
who's the game more important for, Portland or Dame?
Oh, it's more important for the Milwaukee Bucks because this is a tough road trip for them. They've been struggling a little bit. They got a brand new coach. Doc Rivers lost his first game on the bench for them. I don't think he wants to go 0-2.
I can't stand Doc Rivers. He annoys me, Godfather. He really does.
He can be pretty annoying, that's for sure.
He's going to be yelling a lot. His face will be extra sweaty and weird tomorrow. He's an odd one. He's odd.
Glenn Rivers. The doctor.
He took care of his son, though. Got him big, fat contract.
He sure did. He got him rich.
All right, tip-off tomorrow will be at 7. Game day will start at 4:30. You got the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chen.
The Rip City Drive, brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Here on 620 Rip City Radio. Listen on your free iHeartRadio app for all your music, radio, and podcasts.
Boy, Shacker is tempting me to sing again.
No.
I love this song. You know, son of mine. All right, 503-248-0620. Let's go out to the phones. I know it's a problem when listeners are texting my personal phone to inform me that they're on hold and I need to go to them.
That's not a good situation.
Let's take care of that. Let's go out to Victor in Turkey. Victor, my friend, welcome to the show. The Godfather is here. I am here. The stage is yours. Take it away.
Hello to the two best, two high premium analysts, radio analysts. I have an observation. About the last two games, and I noticed that the last night they won, big time by 30 points. I noticed that the Chicago team, they play much faster, especially with the two guys. You remember one of the guys had a funny hairdo, like a 2 feet hairdo above his head. I don't remember that guy, but on the TV, his hairdo was so noticeable. I don't remember his name on the Chicago, but he was so quick and so so stubborn that attacking the basket like a razor bullet. Hey, anyways,
Victor, I think you should get a hairdo like that.
I don't have much hair left.
Yeah.
I'm retired.
Your hair is like Caruso's hair.
I think you're talking about Kobe White.
Yeah, the one. His head was on the TV. His head was so big, and then I noticed when close up, I thought his brain is big. But when they showed the close up, I saw his hair. His hair is like he had too much hair. Anyway, but he was a good player,
Oh yeah.
But Chad, the Chicago. If you watch that game, some of that game. The Chicago, they pounded the inside. They went so many, layups. The statistics show that they had so much, inside the points and also outside points. So what I'm saying, they play much faster game. But if you look at the last game, without the, Greek, Greek. Yeah, but what I'm saying, if you look at the last game, it was much a slower pace, and that was the Blazers. They like a slower game. That's my belief because that's how they won the game. But even you look at some other fast players like Memphis Grizzlies or especially the Oklahoma City, they are much faster. I believe they are much faster pace than in this last game. But maybe the last game was slow because their two best players, Maxime and Frick the Greek, didn't play. Of course. But what I'm saying in general, I think the Blazers has much more success in a slower game because they don't have a really fast. Even the Jeremy Grant. He's a good player, but he's a slow-paced player. You know what I mean? So that's my observation. But the other question I had, Chad, is if they trade the Malcolm Brogdon, what do you like to get a veteran player, similar to him, or just a young player that they have to just wait on him to develop?
Well, I think what the Blazers are looking for, at least what I was told the other day, Victor, is that Portland's in search of draft picks or young players. In fact, I was told yesterday that they do have a great value on young players, guys who might better match the time frame of Scoot and Shaden. But they're looking for young assets, so that could come in the form of draft picks, young players, or maybe a combination of both if, in fact, Brogdon is moved. Now, I would agree, the game against Chicago, Chauncey Billups talked about after the game. The Bulls controlled the paint, and that was an issue in that game. I thought the Blazers actually played a pretty good game. They just couldn't make shots, whether that's because they were tired coming off the road trip or what. I actually thought they played a good game, and you've seen games like that where the execution is good. The team plays hard. They just can't make shots.
Right. And I don't think you get concerned over that because all teams go through those games. You just have games where you can't make shots.
Yes. Now, a couple of areas where they've wanted to improve this year. One is player movement, ball movement, and have the assist numbers go up. Now, for most of the season, the Blazers have been around last in the NBA in assists per game. But the last week, the road trip and the last couple of games at home, the movement has been so much better. In fact, I think they had 29 assists last night. They had a couple of games on the road trip where they were right there at 30 or 31. So they made some strides there. But the pace, the fast break points, the transition points, they had the edge last night against Philly, but for the most part, they're not a team that runs fast. They haven't found those opportunities yet.
Right. Their pace isn't up to what I'm sure Chauncey wants.
I agree. So it's a work in progress, Victor. But Jeremy Grant's playing good basketball as well. Let's go out to Jorge, who is in Portland. Wants to talk a little Vegas. Jorge, what's up, buddy? Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. The lines in Vegas aren't necessarily based on who's going to win the game, but how Las Vegas thinks the handle is going to be. And the lines are designed to get even betting on both sides. Las Vegas probably figured if they made Kansas City the favorite or Kansas City even money, that the money would come in too heavily on one side as on the 49ers, and that's why the 49ers are favored in this game, to get even betting on both sides.
Well, I understand some of what you said, but Godfather, the part that's weird there is that, again, I'm not an odds maker, but I would think the majority of people would see the Chiefs with Mahomes.
Yeah.
And the way they played in the postseason coming out to win over Baltimore. They're getting points. Wait a second. You're going to give me points against Brock Purdy in a Super Bowl with Reed and Mahomes.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. If it were the other way, I could see what he's saying. You might need that to even the money out. Plus, I think you always have a feeling, too, they don't always want it to be
I don't buy
even.
into the whole even action thing. What I think Vegas is trying to do, I really believe this. I think they're trying to dupe people into jumping on one side.
And then killing them.
And then killing them.
Yeah.
Because that's how they make the big bucks.
We've seen that a lot, right?
So in this case, I could see a scenario in my mind. This is why I'm twisted up on the line. They set it as the 49ers' favor, and everyone's like, this is insane. I'm taking Mahomes and Reed. People start pounding the Chiefs and pounding the Chiefs and pounding the Chiefs. And then all of a sudden we show up on Super Bowl Sunday, and all this money and action's on one side, and then the 49ers win it.
Yeah, maybe they know something, right?
Well, they know everything.
Yeah.
They know things before. Vegas knows everything. I don't doubt them. All right. Don't forget, February 9th, Chillin' for a Cause at the Jackson's Food Mart off Bangy Road here at I-5 and 217. Go to our auction page now. Go to ripcityradio.com. Go to our calendar page. You'll find the icon for Chillin' for a Cause. Click on that. The link will be there for the auction. And you can raise money to help us with awareness and support of ALS Northwest. Dwight, have a good night.
You too, Chad.
Justin Myers tomorrow morning at 6.